All right. We are live again, Michelle. We're back for the second episode of the Unpersoned podcast, and we're really excited about talking about this topic today. But the Unpersoned Person podcast is all about exploring the impact of woke ideology on the arts, as we believe the Australian literary scene and beyond is under attack, and we want to explore the hostile nature of the woke ideology and its attack on freedom of expression. So, welcome everyone to the Unperson podcast.
Hey Morgan, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Thank you. We've got another interesting. There's never any lack of drama in the literary world lately, so we've got another interesting story to cover today.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's always drama, um, and the center of the drama is always the woke mob. So they
Yeah.
never let us down with the drama they cause.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's almost like they all follow their own version of a Bible, their own like doctrine. It's almost like they follow they
Yeah.
all have the same way of harassing people,
Yeah.
taking over the industry.
Replicates, doesn't it? It's just the same kind of tactics just replicate over and over in different scenarios and about slightly different subjects, but it's
Right.
just about enforcing that ideology on people and making them bow down and swallow and agree and yeah, basically, as we discussed last week, it's just really authoritarian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's complete madness. Madness, I tell you, it's complete madness. So today's story is quite interesting. It actually resembles your story. So when I was reading this story, so we're basically want to talk about what happened to John Boyne, a pretty well-known writer, fiction writer, who got cancelled because he supported phrase gone
He
frozen.
supported reality. So,
Sorry.
yeah, he supported reality, basically.
Yes, yes, yes,
Well,
yes.
he's very famous. So I didn't realize he wrote The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which was huge, right? He's
Yeah, yeah,
written
yeah.
a lot of really big things. I didn't realize how big he was. He's a British
Right,
writer, gay man.
right.
And yeah, he's had this prize called the Polari Prize, which I wasn't aware
Yeah,
of until this drama hit up, which is a prize for LGBTQ plus writing. So his book, which is called, what's it called, Earth. Um,
yes.
yeah, it wasn't the content of his book that anybody objected to. It was his political stance on, I suppose, trans issues, and his stance on that from the perspective of being a gay man, and just based on that, because he was longlisted for the prize, there's been all these boycotts and people pulling out of the prize and judges resigning and blah blah blah.
And also because he said he supports and likes J.K. Rowling, and
Yeah.
he self-identified as a turf. So
Mm.
those were the markers or the things that kind of caused this eruption. On a side note, though, I haven't met a turf that I like. That's not insufferable. I just think generally speaking, I've met turfs. The turfs that I've met or interacted with don't like men, and yeah. So I kind of write turfs off. But having said that, on an ideological perspective, biological sex is it's a reality. It's true. So I'm in this like strange middle place when it comes to this gender ideology stuff, because I agree with turfs, but I don't like turfs. I don't. I
You
don't.
don't have to with them. Well, I
No.
think we should let people know in case they don't. It stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists, which is, quite the mouthful, and it makes them sound quite scary. And it was initially a term that was thrown against people like Rowling, who, basically is similar to what you said. Basically, they just believe in biological reality, and while not wanting any discrimination or wishing any harm to, trans men or women, they want to be able to say, well, I believe women are women and men are men. And that's when it's boiled down to it about what it is. But I know what you're saying. The TERF movement in itself has elements that can get quite radical and quite tribal, and it's a nasty war in many ways. This gender stuff, you dip your toes in with a bit of fear.
It's absolute madness, because on both ends, from my perspective, both ends absolutely nutters. Right? It's a cult. Both ends, the culture in both ends are completely like radical and just so far off reality, and just decency that you don't want anything to do with it, because it's so crazy. But then again, the truth is a truth.
Yeah.
Right? So biological reality is real, and like broken clock, is right twice. So in this kind of realm, the TERFs just happen to be right. And the reason why I don't like the TERFs is because of their, from my perspective, anti-male
Gotcha.
sentiment. I don't like hatred of any form, and so that's
I'm
my.
the same. I agree in principle. I was always really surprised how much Rowling got, hammered, because everyone's so sure that she's got these hateful views. But when you actually go back yourself and look at the initial tweets and statements that turned everybody against her, they're quite mild. Like, they say, do what you want to do, live how you want to live. I support everyone's rights. I don't wish anybody any harm, but I do believe that there is biological reality. That's pretty much it. And I agree, and I think probably a lot of people do agree. Well, what people don't agree with is the nastiness that can grow up around the way that is expressed, or the way the way it descends sometimes into bad behavior on both sides. But I think that it's interesting, because we published that piece, remember, on Verity La. Wow, I can't remember the writer now. Can you remember? Oh, how could I have forgotten her name? It'll come to us. Susan Hawthorne. That's right. Lovely Susan Hawthorne. Anyway, so she is an Australian writer. She is the publisher of Spinifex Press. She's a lesbian woman, and she's, she would probably self-identify as a TERF, I imagine, but a very, measured one. And, reading her essay, I did sort of start to see why sometimes some of these women would start to get their backs up a little bit, because there has been a lot of bullying, and from especially trans men towards lesbians in particular. And so I went sort of down this little rabbit hole. I hadn't realized sort of how bad it had got and so forth. So yeah, it's complicated, but what isn't complicated, as you say, is just, truth is truth and hate is hate. So if everyone could sort of cool their heels a little bit and agree on what can be agreed on, and then figure out the differences in a mature, calm way, then that would be ideal. But obviously that's not the climate we're in at the moment.
No, it's not. And just excuse me, to speak to the, I guess, to kind of respond to the whole gender stuff. So there's the TERFs and their position, which I happen to agree with, and there's the trans ideologues who have kind of destroyed what it means to be male, female. They've made it into this thing where you can't actually acknowledge biological sex, which is a reality. And also in doing that, they've also erased what it means to be gay, the
Mm-hmm.
reality of being gay, because
Yeah.
being gay is a biological reality. Like I
Mm-hmm.
happen to be gay, but it's a biological reality. I'm gay because of me being male.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what it stems. That's where sexuality stems from.
Yeah.
It's a biological reality. So there's just no two ways about it. And I don't know. I just don't. It's there's no basis for denying biological reality. I don't know how else to say that. And there's never been a really good argument from where I'm coming from in terms of the trans stuff. Like if you want to be trans, it's totally fine. You can be. But
Mm.
raising biological reality is the issue from where I'm standing. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I get that, especially, as you say, if you're gay or lesbian, you sort of get folded into this rainbow umbrella, right?
yeah,
And that's what this author was saying. Like, this is a prize for LGBTQ plus writers, but it's like that's a broad church of people, and there has to be some way where you can, if you want to present a prize under that sort of banner, of people, you have to understand there's going to be people with broad range of different opinions and different life experiences in there, and really, it's probably not a big surprise that there are some fights in there, but I think that the thing about what's happened with this particular prize and the furor around this guy's being longlisted, it's not, to be honest, it's not really necessarily about being gay or being trans. It's about not agreeing. It's about not, because as you're saying, it's about a rejection of reality,
yeah,
and it's about forcing somebody else to see things the way you see them. Otherwise, they don't have a right to express themselves, and they need to be hounded, and they're out, right? And that's
yeah,
basically what's happening. And in this case, it's happening around LGBTQ issues, but it could happen around race issues or any other issues that the woke, get involved in, because they cannot abide, any dissent.
no, no, and if that, but so they use they disguise their authoritarianism through the lens of speaking up or protecting or defending um, the oppressed. But
Mm,
my question to them would be, well, if you really do care about LGBT people, then why are
yeah,
you erasing biological sex? You're erasing gay people,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
If you really do care about gay people, you're erasing us by
yeah.
by
That's right.
doing.
Yeah, and also causing some backlash as well, because society comes along, and things progress. And yeah, it's true, even like 15 years ago, people weren't as accepting of gay and lesbian people as they are now. Now most countries around the world have, accepted gay marriage, and everyone's just gone, oh, that's not a big deal anymore. You just move on, right?
Yeah,
So that sort of happened. But now actually there's now that people feel like they're having an ideology shoved down their throat, people are starting to sort of get their backs up again. And I've read quite a lot of articles and studies to say there's now more backlash, and it comes towards gay and lesbian people, even if they don't have these same beliefs, because they get folded under, they've been forced under this umbrella of, and they're not allowed to speak out, otherwise they're seen as traitors, right?
right, right.
For having a different view. And it causes backlash as well, that sort of, in under the name of progressing, it actually has regressed the movement, I think.
Yes, yes, and have you noticed that? I don't know if have you noticed that that this woke movement, when it comes to LGBT stuff issues, they quite often refer to the LGBT world as queer,
Mm,
and over time it's less so LGB, it's
yes.
more become queer,
Mm,
and I like as a gay person reject the term queer,
mm,
because for me what I've seen as this term has transformed and
mhm,
become what it is today, it's been less about a person's sexuality and more so about a person's political point of view, like
mm.
being far left and progressive. That's what queer.
Yeah,
That's what queer means.
Yes.
Day.
You're right. We're back to identity politics again, which we spoke a lot about last
Yeah.
week. It's part of your identity, and in fact, for many people, it's like the defining part of their identity. It's not just a part of who they are, as an embodied being, and that's their sexuality or orientation. It's just part of the grab bag of fascination and with identity that's which is obviously a very strong part of the woke movement. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
uh, even in this issue, the us versus them mentality is very clear.
Mm,
Either
mm,
far left
yeah.
progressive, or you're either good, meaning far left progressive, or
Yeah.
you're bad, and
Yeah.
bad meaning you disagree, right? Because all the writer did was identify as a turf,
Mm. Mm.
and yet
He
he
wasn't going online harassing people. Like if he was,
no,
for example, if he was online, saying a lot of hateful stuff about trans people and blah blah blah. Okay, fair enough. People are like, well, this isn't a very nice person, nice behavior to be rewarding, whatever.
right,
I still wouldn't agree with trying to cancel him or whatever, but I could understand more where people were coming from. But he only in a couple of statements and a couple of tweets, and not even recently, but like in the past, people have trawled back through his, he's successful and people want to take him down, right? And they've trawled back through his statements and his tweets, and they've looked at the 3 or 4 things that he has said. I've got some of them here. Maybe we should read them as people know what we're
yes,
talking about. And just based on that, it's just who he is. He's not allowed to believe what he believes, right? It's got nothing to do with his writing, and he's not like some nutter who's always on Twitter saying, kill this person, down with these people. So basically, the initial tweet that they said was unacceptable is when he wrote of J.K. Rowling. As a writer, I'm in awe of her achievements. As a reader, I love her work. And as a fellow TERF, I stand 4 square behind her. So he was basically saying, yes, I believe in that biological reality, and because she obviously cops a lot of flack, and I'm behind her. So that was enough, that kind of no freedom of association in the woke movement, huh?
yes,
He dared to stand behind her, so that's that. And I think he said one other thing. Here we go. Now this was in 2019. Okay.
yeah,
And he wrote, while I wholeheartedly support the rights of trans men and women and consider them courageous pioneers, it will probably make some unhappy to know that I reject the word cis, the term given by transgender people to their non-transgender brethren. I don't consider myself a cis man. I consider myself a man. For while I happily employ any term that a person feels best to find them, whether that be transgender, non-binary, or gender fluid, to name but a few, I reject the notion that someone can force an unwanted term onto another. So basically he's saying, I'm happy to respect you, to respect your beliefs, to call you what you wish to be called, but I don't wish to be forced to say, that I am cis or that I am whatever. And that's not that radical in my opinion anyway. Like why?
no,
So once again, it's that authoritarian thing where the woke have to force you to completely capitulate to their beliefs 100%, otherwise you are out.
yes. Well, saying that is committing blasphemy.
Good point.
That's what it is, and I completely agree with him. And one of the things that I'd questioned when I was having conversations with people about the whole gender ideology, and I didn't know where I was at, so I was trying to understand it.
Yeah.
One of the things was on one level, the trans ideologues say what they say. They say that an individual is born different to their, how they categorize it, as they were born different to the gender that they were assigned. So when they were born, the doctors assigned, say me, man, you, woman, me, boy, or whatever, you, woman. But and that the individual didn't choose it, and they were born in the wrong body. Right. So that to me, when I heard that to me, you're speaking like there's material reality to what you're claiming, right? And
Mm.
then on the other hand, they say gender is completely is a construct
Yeah.
entirely. So then I would think and be like, well, then how can you be born as something how can you be born as something that's socially constructed? You
Mm.
can't be born
Mm.
as something that's made up. So,
Yeah.
but so yeah, I've never gotten
Yeah,
an answer.
there's a little bit logical steps in there, and it's yeah, it doesn't necessarily stand up to reasoning when you drill down.
No, it doesn't, and that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to be trans or whatever. You
Yeah, of
can be
course.
whatever you want, but you just can't. What you can't do is expect um, others to forego their thinking
Yeah.
and and perception of and reality
Yeah.
to for what? Because to me, and I always say this, the thing that makes us human beings is the ability to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what makes us human beings. So
Yeah.
when when they're trying to when any group is trying to shove an ideology down your throat, that what they're doing is that they're taking away your ability to think and they're dehumanizing you in the process.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that for me,
Yeah. It's very anti-human, isn't it? All of identity politics is because it flattens you out to a member of a group, and
Yeah,
that's it, right? That's who you are, a member of a group, and that's just a tiny part of who we are, and we might not even and someone it's kind of like it's not even something you necessarily have to identify with yourself. It can be, but it can be just something that other people slap on you, label they slap on you.
right,
Like people want to call you queer, or people want to call this guy a cis guy, or whatever, and it's like, well, I don't want that label. You call yourself what you want to call yourself, but
right,
push it onto others.
right, right,
Yeah.
right, right, exactly. But it's
Yeah. Go on, Megan. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that so the Polari Prize ended up responding to this backlash,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
thought
Did
was
you see what they said?
I did, and I thought that was really it was really well written. I thought the response was really, really
It
good, and then
was, but then they backflipped a little bit, and I know how that feels because we did that at Verity La. Well, I did that at Verity La, along with the others working with me at that time. Because when you come out thinking, okay, well, we can talk about this. We're writers, we're thinkers, and if we put out a statement, hopefully it will be taken in the right spirit. And so, what they initially said, I think I've got it here somewhere. Let's have a look. Okay, so they said. They issued a statement on the 7th of August. They said the Polari Prize was founded on the core principles of diversity and inclusion. We are committed to supporting trans rights and amplifying trans voices. The role of the prize is to discover the best LGBTQ plus books written in the UK and Ireland each year. A little bit more, yada, yada, yada. And then they said it is inevitable given the challenges we face and the diversity of the lived experience we now represent under the LGBTQ plus banner, Polari umbrella, that even within our community, we can at times hold radically different positions on substantive issues. And this is one of those times. So they stuck by, and they tried to say, listen, we're all big enough and mature enough to be able to have different opinions and to not rip each other to shreds. And they went on to say that they do not eliminate books based on the wider views of writers, and that books are one of our best means to explore the most difficult and divisive issues, and we encourage an open dialogue across our community, which is good. Sounds good, right? I would agree with that.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But what happened then was that, of course, there was one of those horrible open letters, of course. I tried to find today, and I clicked on the link in this. One of the sources we're getting some of this information from is the Quillette article.
Yes.
Excellent. And there was a link in there to the ransom note, the open letter, which was designed to try and get Polari to pull him from the long list. And it's gone, it's disappeared now, you can't see it. But basically, we can imagine what it said. One of the things they said, here we go, the Polari Prize. So this is in the the letter against him. The Polari Prize issued a statement saying that it believes its long listees can hold different positions on substantive issues. This is like long listing a racist with authors of colour, then telling everyone it's a mere different position on a substantive issue. So that was one of the detractors, and one of the things that was said in the open letter to try and pressure Polari to backflip, which they eventually did. And I thought we could unpack that. I find that statement so dishonest.
Yeah. I mean,
to say it's like long listing a racist with authors of color, it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. This guy didn't say hateful things about trans people. He hasn't been going out like a racist would, in discriminating or harassing people of color. He has just spoken about beliefs, not about people. He has spoken about an ideology and beliefs that he doesn't ascribe to, and he's very politely said, I don't agree, and I would prefer not to be called cis, and that's all he said. So to try and liken him to he's a dangerous person just because he holds this belief, he's similar to being a racist, and he's dangerous to have him on the same long list and have to, for other people, trans people on the long list, to have anything to do with him, as if he's got a record of being abusive. He just literally doesn't. If the evidence was there, that would have been slapped all over X, and it just hasn't been. It's not there. That's not who the guy is. But because he won't bow the knee,
and because he has his own opinion that he's expressed, he's by default, because he's cis, by default he's guilty. And I would love to ask them, with what evidence do you have to compare him to a racist? I mean, a racist is someone who is racist and can be there's verifiable evidence to show that this person's a racist. So to compare him to that, I want to ask them, with what evidence do you have to make that comparison? You know, if we take what they're saying on face value, you have to assume that he's already hateful and he's done hateful things to trans people, which there is no evidence to suggest that he has been hateful towards trans people. The crime that he's committed is expressing his authentic opinion. That's the crime that he's committed.
Which they feel invalidates their very existence, and therefore it's a violence and an erasure of their very being, which is such a hyperbolic response to someone just not agreeing with you.
Right. It's childish. It's manipulative. It's insincere, and it's unserious. It's just not serious.
No,
it's not serious. But unfortunately, the Polari Prize kind of caved to their
they did. What happened was then, so that petition went out and all these people signed it, writers, editors, publishers, booksellers, demanding he was removed, Boyne was removed from the long list. And after a couple of days, probably about 48 hours, I think it was, something like that, they put out another statement. And in this one, I know what these statements are like because I sort of had to write one. It's they did the do better. Oh God. Okay, so they, the best. Okay, so unfortunately, Boyne rightly remains on the long list. This is quoting from the Quillette article. So he hasn't taken himself off. He's standing firm. So good on him.
Yeah.
The organisers issued a new statement along with promises to do better. So they said, the hurt and anger caused has been a matter of deep concern to everyone associated with the prize, for which we sincerely apologise. We will be undertaking a full review of the prize processes, consulting representatives from across the community ahead of next year's awards, taking on board the learnings from this year. So basically, I don't think next year they're going to make the same mistake. Not that it was a mistake. The mistake is backflipping, but the mob has won because everyone's too scared now, right? The prize is not going to be what it was. They're not going to be choosing on the merit anymore. They're going to now be choosing on people's politics and identities, and other people who don't agree or have different opinions will be much less likely to speak out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a shame that they gave in to. You don't negotiate with terrorists. Like
Yeah.
that's, it's as simple as that. You do not negotiate with terrorists. There is no rhyme or reason for what they're saying. What they're saying is completely irrational. It's completely just false. We should actually just call this podcast, bloody I forgot, my mind's gone blank. I'm so enraged by this. My mind's gone blank. But we should oh my god, my mind's gone blank. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But yeah, what they're
Well,
saying is completely false.
yeah, that's right. And it's harmful. Like, it's just that kind of, I don't know. Once again, quoting from the Quillette article, I thought this was a good statement. The Polari, because the guy who wrote the article, I can't remember his name. I'll put it in the show notes. Sorry, it was a good article. The guy who wrote the article about it is himself a gay man, and he said the Polari organisers have sold out gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and old school transsexuals.
Yeah.
Constituencies whose members have begun to push back at the forced teaming that requires them to sign off on radicalized trans activist demands in the name of LGBT solidarity. So that's pretty much what you were expressing as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we should call this podcast instead "Moral Courage," because that's seems like that's the theme of our podcast. That the literary scene is lacking moral courage.
It really is. That's so true. That's so true. And I do understand the pressure. Like, it's interesting from such a big, I find it interesting because when Verity La went through this, so this was in 2020, and especially to Australia, that was very new, that kind of cancellation in our literary scene. And the whole sort of woke movement, I mean, it had been raging for a couple of years in the US, Canada, UK, and so on. But it was like most things, it was coming more slowly towards Australia, right? So it took me by surprise, and I didn't really understand at that stage what I was dealing with. All the strange terminologies that get thrown at you. It's not enough to be racist, you need to be anti-racist. The caucasity, and there was just all this terminology. I was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What are they saying? Everyone was talking in this weird ideological speak, and they were all parodying each other, and I was like, wow, what is this? And that's kind of what set me down this path of like really becoming really quite fascinated with the culture wars and the psychological impetuses behind it, and just all the sort of weird shit that goes on basically. But I'm surprised because that they have backflipped, because listen, this is 5 years later. This is 2025. Everyone knows the rule book, the playbook now, how the cancellation goes. And the worst thing you can do is apologize. And I'm assuming that this organization, they've been going for 15 years. So unlike Little Verity La, where it was pretty much just a little handful of people, I'm sure they're a bit more established than we were. And also, they're in that space that's already quite a contested space. Surely they should have known this was going to come at some stage, or seen it coming, and as you say, had a little bit more moral courage and fortitude to see it through. I'm surprised they backflipped so quickly. I mean, I know and I understand when you're in the eye of that storm, it's very chaotic and you panic and so forth, but I'm just surprised it's still working.
Right. Look, I assume the woke mob would have infiltrated the prize.
It was board members who also and judges, not just other people on the long list, other writers on the long list. That's another thing, they're pressuring other writers to get that guilt by association. You must now withdraw, and We saw that a little bit in Australia as well, didn't we? You know,
Yes, yes,
with the thing with Ren Wild, you know,
right,
who Karen Wild. So she, when she had her prize taken away, the black and white prize about a month or two ago, because of tweets she made supporting Hamas, and we saw a lot of writers quickly. You know, boycott, and also quickly other judges and so forth quickly quit from Queensland State Library as judges and so forth. So yeah, people panic, and they want to show that they're on the right side, you know, and maybe that is their true intentions, but you know, there's a lot of pressure behind the scenes as well.
yeah. I mean, this is a writer that was promoting Hamas,
Mm,
supporting Hamas,
yeah,
a terrorist organization.
yeah.
Um,
And she
and
said she didn't, she backflipped on that as well. She said,
right,
oh, I didn't know that, because it was about, I think the tweet was about, maybe we can do a show on this, you know, down the
yeah,
track. There was one particular tweet that she said she'd put up and then deleted. And it was that really famous photo of Yahya Sinwar in the armchair in the bombed out building. And he's like got the one arm and he's like waving at the drone, you know.
right,
And she basically said she didn't know who he was, right? And that because when she was praising him and his resistance and what a great man, she was like, oh, I didn't know who he was. I mean, come on. Karen's been very active in the pro-Palestinian movement for, you know, for several years. And there were other things that she had said that made it very clear she did know who he was. So,
yeah,
I mean, it just beggars belief that, you know, everyone in the world knew who he was at that point.
right.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
she didn't just, when I first heard about that,
yeah,
I heard from someone who just, I didn't know who they were talking about. They said, oh, this thing has happened, and this
right,
writer has had her prize rescinded, and all she did was make one pro-Palestinian tweet. And I said to the person I was talking to, oh, that's terrible, you know, like, because if that is the case, and that is terrible, of course you should be able to support your to tweet out your support for Palestinians, you know,
right,
not an issue. And Michelle de Cressa did that with the Stella Prize, you know. And
right,
but it's one thing doing that. It's another thing like waving your flag for Sinwar, who not only was a terrorist in terms of harming Israelis, he's harmed a lot of Palestinians. He's
yeah,
not a nice person, right?
no,
Um,
no,
so when I at first I was like, oh, that's terrible. The government shouldn't be doing that, you know. And then when I realized who it was, and you know, that, you know, she had said a lot more than just that. I was like, well, I still don't know if I agree with rescinding anyone's prize, but to pretend that it's just this one or two innocent pro-Palestinian tweets
no.
is dishonest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But you know, for someone like her who complains about colonialism, and her ilk complain about colonialism, I find that
Yeah.
just ironic that she would allow Islamism into, because I view her as someone who's like a traitor, right? You complain about imperialism of the West, but you're in support of Yahya Sinwar,
I
an
know.
Islamic terrorist. So I just view these people as kind of traitors. Like we talk. Well, the West talks a lot about. Well, the West has been forced to talk a lot about America, particularly about the slave trade. And we know that that Africans in Africa at the time were selling their own,
Yeah.
to the
Everyone had slaves at different points in time. Yes.
right. But you had Africans who were betraying their own and selling their own, and this is how I view people like her.
Oh,
You're allowing an imperialist ideology such as Islam to
mm.
enter into your realm, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, it's absolutely crazy. It's
I must say, like, it's a tricky one to talk about, because obviously there's a lot of really emotional issues, and we're getting bombarded with a lot of imagery which makes people feel really strongly. There's a lot of propaganda swirling around. It's really hard to know what to think. And I understand people. Of course, people are concern and have compassion for people who are suffering, and of course nothing wrong with that at all. It's a nice human emotion. It would be a worry if you didn't have that experience, but I just think we've lost, as you say, our moral compass and courage a little bit, because we should be able to hold in our minds that that there is this suffering going on, but also that the way the West is just framing the whole Israel-Palestine conflict within this oppress and oppressor, this woke structure. Actually, I think it's immoral in a sense, because it's having real world damages. This isn't just a little spat in the literary world. This is like a propaganda warfare, which is elongating a war, I think, because people are feeling that if they keep agitating and they can't speak against Hamas, because they are the resistance, they are the oppressed, right? And so you've got, as you say, you've got all these Westerners, waving flags for Hamas, for Hezbollah. The march that was on Sydney Harbour Bridge, there was a big banner of Khomeini. There was ISIS, Al Qaeda, and it's like, these are not good people. We can have a march for peace and express our care, but we shouldn't be getting in bed with these people. I don't know if it's just ignorance on a lot of people's behalf, or they're just sort of getting heady on the whole thing of it. I just don't know, Morgan. Yeah.
I think it's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. There's ignorance there, but there are key leaders who are leading this kind of movement.
Yeah.
Who know exactly, for example, what Islam is, but play it and play language games and use other manipulative tactics to really hide what Islam really is, and that it and I always say it's it is an imperialist ideology. I see it's everywhere. I see.
And for the viewers who don't know, you grew up as a Muslim yourself. So you're speaking from a lot of knowledge, from a lifetimes of experience, and certainly not from a anti-Muslim stance, because your family, your friends, your community, many of them they're Muslims. So it's not you have hatred towards these people. You've just seen the dark side of this ideology.
And that's the other thing. You often get accused of being Islamophobic if the moment you criticize Islam. And Islam is, to me, there's no such thing as the term Islamophobia. It's not a real term. It's just a term to mask or to shut down criticism of Islam. You want to talk about anti-Muslim bigotry, that's a whole different conversation, and that is real. But
of course,
but the work refused to make a distinction between the term Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bigotry. They refuse to make the distinction between Islam and Muslims. I'm talking about Islam, the ideology.
And I suppose it's similar with the term transphobia as well. Not that some people aren't transphobic. I'm sure there are plenty of actual transphobic people, but when it's used as a term to shut down people like this guy, Boyne, he's not transphobic. He's just saying, okay, this isn't my belief, but you do you, I'll do me. He's not trying to go around spreading hate. He's not trying to discriminate. He's not trying to hurt anybody. He just doesn't want to buy into what he sees as falsity. But that term transphobia is then used to shut people down.
Yes. Similar. That's right. So they have all these terms that are used to just shut, conversations that they don't like. It's a write-off word. They put that label on you, and you're a write-off. We have to kind of waken that ability, waken these terms. We have to waken it and empower ourselves to reject these labels. This is why, for me, reason and rationality is so important, because you do employ reason and rationality. It kind of wakens that So like religious, because they operate like religious individuals, like dogmatic religious
Yeah,
individuals,
yeah,
and they're irrational, and the way they operate they're quite mystical,
yeah.
and the way to get rid of mysticism in this way is to employ rationality and reason.
Mm.
You
And there's
know?
so much moral outrage. That's what's doing my head in the literary scene generally. I don't like I'm not someone who generally likes jumping in and having, argy-bargy online with people, because I think it's a bit of a waste of time. Plus, I wish I was a person who could let things sort of roll off my back more. I mean, some people love it. They love the tussle, right? I don't. It stresses me quite a lot. So, but I do watch and look at what other people are saying, and yeah, just people I know who are, they're pretty nice people, and I just think, oh, there's some sort of like moral derangement going on. It's like catching
Yes.
in the air where people are feeling. Yeah, I understand why people feel upset when they see suffering and so forth, but then the steps that happen after that, where it's got to be someone who you're going to blame, and then the anti-Semitism that's just going nuts at the moment.
Yeah,
um,
it's
it's
crazy.
just really, I just hate the way people are treating each other online now, more than even when I was part of it in 2020. It's getting progressively worse, and I always think, what's the next thing going to be, right? Because you've got different sort of woke ideologies peaking at different times in different places around different issues. So obviously the sort of transgender stuff seems to really be strong in the UK, right? And then in America, it's often more racial stuff. And in Australia at the moment, I would say the peak thing is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So,
Right now,
but something else will pass. Let's hope it passes sooner rather than later, like actually passes as a catastrophic event, and people will move on. But I think people's need for that drama and that sense of moral outrage will just find another target. That's my feeling. I feel like
yeah,
it's so infiltrated now in the Australian literary scene and our culture generally.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, like I just think the way to kind of tackle this is it's kind of like it mirrors life, because like I think like life is simple, but it's not easy. A lot of life's problems, the solution to a lot of life's problems is simple, but it's not easy. It's really really hard.
Yeah.
So in the same way, I think the way to combat this is, it's simple, but it's not easy, because you're dealing with people's fear, you're dealing with psychology, because the woke mob have been successful at like breaking down people's spirits, because they go for who you are. They go
Yeah.
directly for who you are, you know. Um, but and I always keep coming back to this. But one of the ways is, to kind of fight back against this is, number one, um, let's not give as much power to allegations. Allegations are just allegations. So if I call you
Yeah.
a racist, it's
Yeah.
just an allegation until I can prove it.
Yeah.
Going back to first principles, innocent until proven guilty.
Mm.
We just, like, individually, we did that in our day-to-day conversations, and someone's being called a racist, and we're just like, well, hold on, what,
Mm.
do they do anything? What do they do? Is there evidence for what you're claiming? If not, then sorry, it's
Yeah,
innocent
that's
until
right.
proven.
Yeah. Just don't throw away your own sense of logic and your own values the minute something's just said online. But as you say, the people who do that, it's being led by a mob mentality and by a lot of fear, and a lot of self-interest as well.
Right.
With the self-interest is to get ahead, because as we know, being a leader of a sort of a mob movement can be quite quite good for you, especially in areas like the arts.
Right.
It gives you a profile and some power, and it can lead to opportunities and so forth. Um, it's also psychologically rewarding for some people, obviously, the sort of narcissistic personalities that get off on that. For others, it's not that, it's just fear motivating them. Like, they might not even be enjoying it, they might not agree with it, but they're not going to say anything. And who can blame people sometimes? Because you stick your head up, it will definitely get, shot down. So there's a lot of fear. I think generally I think most people probably look on in a bit of horror. If you look at who the core agitators are, it's not necessarily the majority.
No.
But the majority are scared or just turned off and don't want to get involved. And I do understand that, but I think we do need a bit more moral courage not to let this completely take root and take over.
Right. I see we've got a few comments by someone who's not happy with us, Michelle.
Oh, who is it? Do they have a name?
I have no idea who this person is, but they've just said, "Well, I just saw the title of the podcast and thought there would be something interesting about literary discourse to hear. Instead, I get two people being agitated about people daring to be politically active and state an opinion. The whole cancellation whining is unworthy for people seriously interested in literature, in my opinion."
What do you think about that, Marvin? Do they have a name? Do you know who it is, or we don't know?
I don't know. I can't even pronounce what this person's name.
Anyway.
They've got a strange name. But yeah, to that I would say we're not being agitated because someone or people have expressed their political opinion. It's because they cancel someone for their opinion.
Yeah. It's pushing your opinion onto others. There's not a problem with having your own opinion.
No.
Yeah.
So this person's obviously having a dialogue with something that we didn't say. Right? They're projecting what they would like for us to say, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a group of people, right, in the literary scene. We're trying to cancel someone because they don't like that person's opinion, their point of view, and because they don't like that person's point of view, they're trying to get rid of, cancel them.
Yeah, take away their opportunities. That's what I think is interesting. So, for example, going back to the example of Ren Wild, people were up in arms that, because of her opinions, that it shouldn't equate to her prize being rescinded. And I'm quite sympathetic to that view, actually. I think that if you believe in free speech, you can't believe in it just for when people agree with you. You have to support the opinions of people who don't agree with you. I'm troubled by her support for, what I've seen of her on social media, her support for Hamas. But whether that should equate to her not getting a prize for a completely unrelated book, that's up for debate. So I do understand, people saying, oh, well, people should be able to have their opinions. And so people are very happy to back that person and sign open letters to say that she shouldn't have her opportunity rescinded, and there's a good argument for that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but then when it comes to someone like this that they don't agree with, this guy Boyne, they're the first to then turn around and say, oh no, but that's beyond the pale, we can't have those opinions, those are hateful opinions, these ones are okay, these ones aren't. So I think that person's actually being quite illogical.
Yeah, absolutely. So apparently the person's name is Albert. I don't know who Albert is.
No.
Asking another question. So Albert's asking, what does pushing on ideology on others mean? Saying it too loudly, cancel people are just people that fell out of favor with the public. That's a normal thing to happen. It's always happened. Oh, Albert.
Well, I think a lot of it. I think one of the factors that show that sort of identifies pushing your opinion on other people is that it's often quite coordinated. It's not just one person who will just even go on social media and say, I don't think this guy Boyne should be on the long list because I think he's a transphobe and he said A, B, and C, and I don't agree with it. That's one thing. But coordinating a whole group of people often sometimes putting pressure on other people to agree with you, putting fear into the community so that people feel they have to jump on board. I mean, I know this happens because I was at the eye of that storm with Verity Lara in 2020, and to think that it's just this little organic movement where someone just says, well, I don't like that story you published. Absolutely not. It is a bullying mob, and it's quite coordinated. It's very different in nature.
That's right. It is. That's exactly it. It's coordinated, and there's consequences. Right?
Yeah.
So it's systematically coordinated, and there's consequences to the coordination. So that's what makes it. That's what we're talking about. Albert. He said, "Cancel people are just people that fell out of favor with the public." That's just not right. That's
your experience at Albert. You never fall out of favor, because it doesn't take much, let me tell you.
No. Yeah. That's just not what being cancelled means. Is not just falling out of favor with the public. By the way, these are
favor with the public. You've fallen out of favor with a handful of people whose word is law, who have some sort of power to wield, and who wield it to take down other people for various reasons, which usually benefit them in some way. It's very different than just the general public going, well, I don't like what you said or what you published or whatever.
Right. It just sounds like Albert's projecting his own I don't know, insecurities about whatever it is. Look, if the shoe fits, the shoe fits. But
yeah, that's just another way to stop people. Like, one of the things that happens so after I went through the cancellation in 2020, then I sort of took a year to lick my wounds, because it is psychologically quite damaging. And then I came back and I was very lucky to get a piece published in the Australian called My Year of Living Shamefully, and that was just I wrote that just for myself, to explain to myself and sort of what had happened, more than anything. And then, of course, there was another round of nastiness then, and that's because you're not supposed to. They call you a whiner. You're supposed to just take your punishment and lie down and crawl away. And if you dare to stand up and say, well, that's not fair, or that wasn't true, or the way everyone coordinated to take down one person and not giving the benefit of the doubt, that was not good behavior. You're not allowed to say these things, otherwise you're a whinging, whining little biatch, and it sounds a little like Albert's kind of saying a little bit like that to us, like, over it, it's just your accountability, blah 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 blah. But as I said, when it's on when the shoe's on the other foot, and it's somebody, for example, whose politics Albert might, or just any theoretical Albert, might agree with, then suddenly that's a terrible injustice, right? Like with Ren Wild, suddenly everyone gathered around her. It's terrible. She's being censored. That's an injustice. You could argue that that's just accountability. She made tweets supporting Hamas, and the prize did not want to be associated with someone supporting terrorism. Therefore, you could say, well, that's your accountability, right? That's another way you could see that.
Right.
But in that case, the literary world gathered around and supported her. So, yeah, it can change depending on whether that person shares your politics or they don't, whether you think that's cancellation or whether you think that's accountability.
Yeah, he's just Albert's just minimizing what cancellation is, rather than actually just contending with what we're actually saying, which is, cancellation is not just one person expressing that they don't like this person's writing or their point of view, and that's it. It's not about stopping freedom of expression. Right? It's not about that. That's not what we're saying. Is the cancellation does actually that. It stops freedom of expression.
It's a mechanism. It's a mechanism designed to do that. in my opinion. It's really it's a showpiece in a way, and that's not something I understood at the time. But then I realized, okay, that's why everything has to be public, because during that time,
Yes.
being old school and old, whenever I wanted to, I was like, okay, well, I'll just pick up the phone and I'll talk to this person and I'll tell them, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, that wasn't my intention to belittle your experience, or, what can we do to sort this out? Let's listen to each other. No one wants to do that, because then I realized later on, it has to be public. It's a performance. And
Yes.
the reason it's a performance, and that you're to, things that are said to you are said in public, and you're only to reply in public, is because, one, they're trying to catch you out to say something, because you get all flurried or upset, and you might say something which they can say, well, there you are, you're a terrible person.
Right.
Generally, the performance is really an aspect of the public performance, is an aspect of cancellation, and because the idea is that you're a message to everybody else. It's not just about you. We're not whinging about cancellation from me or from you. We're saying what it's doing to that. What this sort of does to the literary scene in Australia and internationally is it puts a fear into people. It makes people start to self-censor. People stop being able just to communicate clearly, and it's just a bad feel around.
Right. Which then ultimately affects the quality of writing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what it does. It stops good writing. It makes people scared to actually write about real things.
That's right. People suppress and they censor each other. It's like peer censorship and also self-censorship.
Yeah. And people get
Yeah.
scared to write real characters that they get scared to actually write about life, the human condition. The human condition is good, bad, and everything in between that. But because so I view the work as anti-nature. I don't view them as I view them as kind of corrupting nature, and so because to me they're anti-nature, you can't actually express the human condition, because we are nature.
Yeah, we're complex creatures, and there's darkness. There's a lot of darkness and murkiness and undigested emotions in the human psyche, and that was basically the story that Verity La got cancelled for publishing. Tried to express some of those things. The protagonist was a very imperfect narrator, and owned up to that, but that was considered not okay, because he wasn't, he was being a colonial, manipulator or whatever. And it's like, people do that. People do take advantage of other people. There's all these imbalances and power imbalance. This is life. And if we can't explore them and talk about them, then I don't really see how things will get better. And also, it's going to make for very boring art. And I think also for people who do come from, quote unquote marginalized groups, the other side of this isn't just what you can't say, but what you are sort of forced to say. I've heard from people who fall into different, what they would call marginalized writing, identities. And one of the complaints, valid complaints that I hear, is that people feel they're put into a box, and that the publishing industry only wants to hear, they might just want to write romance or science fiction or whatever, but because they're a particular identity, they're supposed to write their trauma story, or their queer story, or their whatever story. And they're like, well, I don't want to be put in a box. So there's that side of it as well. It's telling everyone not just what they can't say, but what they can say, or they should say, if they want to get ahead.
Yeah, in a very specific way. So if they want to write about their own trauma, they have to write about it in a specific way.
Yeah.
So the publishing industry would be more open to me writing about Australia being racist, versus what my experiences with my own culture, which for me had been far worse than living in Australia than Australia. society.
Yeah.
That's an inconvenient story, and a story
Yeah.
that kind of blurs the line between this simple good and evil, and good
Mm.
being in my case black, and evil being white. My story blurs that line.
Mm-hmm.
It does. That's just not the case. It's just factually wrong anyway to have that category.
Mm.
White being bad and black being good. It's
Yeah,
just
I take umbrage, we both do, I know, but with
yeah,
the whole structure, the whole work structure that all these kind of issues stem from and are hung on, is that whole thing of oppressor, oppressed, power, this and that. I just hate that way of looking at the world. I think it divides us. It makes us unkind to each other. It's not based in reality, and it doesn't allow people to be who they truly are. It doesn't allow people to change, and doesn't allow for growth. Doesn't
yeah.
allow for diversity.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't. And like when I see people who that's their mindset,
Mm.
particularly when it comes to racial stuff, like all
Mm-hmm.
they see is color. That's
Yeah.
all they see is color, and
Yeah.
that I would say the most racist people that I've come across are the progressives, because all they
Same.
see is my skin color. That's all they see, and what they think a black person should be.
Mm.
Totally different from what it actually is.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, people are trying to force you to conform to the identity that they've constructed for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it's the same, being gay. It's the same. They expect you to behave in a particular kind of way. I'm meant to click my fingers, and I'm meant to, speak all this lingo, this gay lingo, because that's apparently what makes you gay, and then what makes you black is all this other stuff, and it's nuts. It's not. It's oppressive. It's racist. It's homophobic. It's all of those things. Ironically, it's all of those things.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's another week in the world of literature.
It is.
I'm glad well, wait, let's keep an eye on this story. I'm glad that this guy, the writer Boyne is sticking to his guns. He's not capitulated. He hasn't put out an
Yes.
apology himself, although the Polari Prize have.
Yeah.
He's not stepping down. They're going to have to forcibly remove him, which is a big, bold move if they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's hope he stands his ground, because sometimes, he's quite a sort of well-off, very well-established writer. So he can probably afford, like Rowling, he can afford to stand his ground. Yes, he'll have, have a lot of abuse thrown his way, but at a certain point, I suppose, when you have a level of success, you can't be cancelled. So those people sometimes then take it upon themselves to sort of make that stance because they can, whereas people like you and I, it's harder in terms of continuing forward if you want to keep getting published and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we've been on for a while, but I've got just one more, I guess, question, because he obviously can't really get cancelled because he's really successful, and he's a capital W writer.
Yeah.
But for smaller writers who are wanting to hopefully get to that place,
Yeah.
who do think, all right, let me just be good and say nothing, keep my head down, and write. And to those writers, which there are a lot of people in that predicament who have given their life to writing.
Yeah.
To writers like that, I often say, is it worth it? Is it worth feeling subjugated and being subjugated? For what? Isn't writing about expression? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it about exploring the human condition? And so,
Yeah.
if you're being stopped from doing that, what's the point?
cost? And what's the cost inside you internally in terms of not just your creativity, which absolutely will suffer, but just your psychology, your peace of mind, your sense of yourself. I just think that's too big a price to pay, even though it's not without cost. Saying things like we're saying now, we're going to have a lot of people say, oh, well, they're beyond the pale, and unfriend you or whatever. But, so there is a cost, because if people don't want to sort of keep space for different opinions, you can't make them, and that's that. People will turn away, and that's that. But I think that you have to just weigh it up. Like, is the cost worth it to you? For me, it definitely is. I don't want to, life doesn't last that long, and I don't want to go through life pretending. And I think it's the wrong thing to do as well, because you're not being authentic, and you're not showing leadership as well. That's one thing that I think we both, we've discussed that with the journal, we would like to be a place that shows leadership, in the sense that we can talk about things, anything. No one has to agree with us. We're certainly not going out to demonize or cancel anybody else. And in fact, the journal, we would love to feature people with all, like, true diversity of views and opinions, and even publish things that we don't necessarily agree with, but we think have good points and are well written and well argued. And then we can have on the same platform views that are opposed to each other, and let's just normalize again holding space for those, and not losing our shit, and being mature enough to be able to go, okay, let's think about these things, and perhaps we'll change our minds. But
that's right.
Yeah.
And and we'll say what we mean, and if we're wrong, we're wrong, and that's just it. No one's perfect.
Don't have the answers, but
no one's perfect.
No.
We have the right to express our opinion.
Yeah. And you shouldn't be made to feel ashamed and like you're a terrible, terrible person, for holding a wrong opinion, because it's got to be redemption for people as well. You've got to learn and grow and change. And that's one of my pet hates about the whole woke movement. There's no room for redemption or change in there. You either you express these views, or you pretend to, or you're out of the pack, right? You're kicked out. So I don't want to participate in that, and I would like to show a different way. And and I think if the more people do that, the better it is for everyone. If you duck your head and everyone ducks their head, then it just leads to a really horrible atmosphere.
Right. And also, like, finally, they're not as strong as they make themselves out to be.
Yeah.
They're just not. And that's something else that I want people to sort of try to remember. I often view these people as like people in the basement, like nerds in the basement, who are just angry, typing away, and infiltrating literary organizations and magazines, and just angry in the dark. That's just that's how I view these people.
And it's good to bring it into the light. And I think that you're, that's one of the things I admire about you, Megan, is that, I think because of your life experiences, because of growing up, realizing that you're a gay man within a community and culture and religion that wasn't going to accept that. And you had to have that strength to step away and become who you knew you were, and learn to do that, even if it's going to cost you, right? So you've been through those kind of phases, which had much stronger real life consequences than just losing some friends in the literary scene. So I know you often say, like, it's not that it doesn't bother you, but compared to other things, it's like, and it's worth it to be authentic.
It is. I mean, you come out on the other end and you're just like, oh my God. And you come out on the other end and you've let the chips fall where it may. For me, that was in my own personal journey, that was the most liberating part of this whole journey for me, was letting the chips fall where it may. Let it fall where it may. And if you develop your own values, you have your own values, you say what you mean. And if you're wrong, okay, you're wrong. If you're right, okay, you're right. but what you have a right to do is to express your genuine beliefs, genuine ideas, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't be crucified for that. And you can hate it as much as you want. That's fine. You can hate ideas. You can disagree with it. You can find it revolting. But what you can't do is to silence our voice. That's
Yeah, that's
you know.
right. Well,
And
only if we let it happen, really. Like you can give it a red hot try, and people do and still
right,
are.
right,
There's nothing to stop them as long as people aren't doing something illegal. It's not nice behavior getting in a mob and writing letters and trying to get someone cancelled, but there's nothing, oh, well, depending on what you say, I suppose there's defamation, but, if you tread the line, you can do that. Okay, but is it the best way to live your life? Is it the best way to deal with life when someone just doesn't agree with you? Is it a mature way to conduct yourself?
right, right,
I don't think it's very pretty.
right, right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
That's
Michelle.
it, Megan.
That was good. It was good.
We need to do another
Uh,
fortnight.
yes. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and Albert, thank you for
Yeah, thanks
engaging.
for the comments, Albert. Like, really, I mean, it's great to have people writing in and, and
Yeah.
expressing what they don't like about what we're saying, and then we have the chance to respond. That's awesome. That's good.
Right,
I
right, right. So,
I welcome Albert in next time.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. Me too. So you're more than welcome, Albert, to disagree with us, to throw mud at us. It's all good. And
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Excellent. Okay, till next time.
Yes,
See you,
yes.
Ryan.
We'll see you
See you.
guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.